Hi from Seoul! So I wanted to share my experience flying from the Midwest to Seoul in the pandemic with a brief stopover in LA. We flew to LA first on a Monday morning, and after 2 nights in LA, we left on the overnight flight of Wednesday night. The bags that we had were 2 large check-in bags, 2 carry-on bags, a baby carrier, and a stroller. And I just learned this trip that you can take your stroller all the way to the gate, and then at the gate they'll check it for you, and when you land they'll re-deliver the stroller to you so you can continue to stroller your baby through the airport. So that was really helpful. When we first left the Midwest, my mother-in-law came inside the airport with us. She helped us check in the 2 big bags. Then we came back out to say bye to my husband. And then I had Taylor in the stroller with one hand, and my carry-on luggage and her carry-on luggage would fit on top of mine. And so basically I had 2 things I was pushing, the stroller in one hand and the carry-on with the other, which had a little carry-on stacked on top of it. So getting to the gate wasn't too hard because we just had the 2 things to push. Once we got to the gate, I took Taylor out of the stroller, I broke down the stroller, I passed the stroller onto the airline, and then Taylor and I walked through the jet bridge. At first Taylor wanted to pull her own carry-on, but after a few steps it got a little heavy, so she asked me to take it. And it was really easy getting to our seat. She literally just climbed to her seat and strapped herself in. Are you excited? Yeah. So on Wednesday night, we headed to LAX around 9:20 p.m. for our 11:55 p.m. flight. My brother came inside the terminal with us to the check-in counter, and then he left. And so then when it was my turn to go to the counter, I just strolled Taylor and the check-in bags to the counter, and then I went back to the line and I pushed the 2 check-in bags and then put them on the thing, said bye to the bags, and we were checked in. But then when we got to the TSA, that was the hard part because she was asleep, and I put all the luggage up onto the conveyor belt, but then I still had Taylor, so I had to take her out of the stroller, and I was holding her, but then I only would have one hand to break down the stroller, which was impossible because my stroller requires 2 hands. But I think because of COVID and stuff, no one's willing to help, and so I was just kind of what do I do? And then a TSA officer saw me and was like, just leave the stroller here and I'll have it inspected on the side and bring it through. So that's what happened. But after I got through the detector, I was holding Taylor and I was just waiting for my stroller for a good 5 minutes or so. Everything had to be put into bins, individual bins, because of COVID. So my bins were stacking up at the end of the belt, and I couldn't take them off because I'm still holding her. I can't take any bin out with one hand because they're pretty large. And then I'm just waiting for the stroller. So that was kind of a stressful part of it. Eventually someone brought the stroller around, but they had broken it down. So then I was I need help reopening it because I can't reopen it with her. I can't pass her to anyone. So I asked an officer if he could help me. He looked pretty annoyed, but he put on his gloves and he's sure, and then he asked me what to do, and I verbally instructed him how to open up the stroller. So that was the hardest part, I would say, of the airport process. Then once the stroller was open, I was able to lay Taylor back down into the stroller and get all my stuff off the belt, and then head to the gate. Because I had about 30 minutes left before it was time to board, I decided to wash up for the evening. So I did my little skincare routine, and then we walked to the gate. So yeah, I got ready for bed in this restroom, family restroom. The airport was pretty empty. I've flown actually multiple times during this pandemic, and it was definitely on the emptier side. My flight was about maybe 40% full, Yeah, most people had like 3 seats to themselves. Taylor and I had 3 seats for the 2 of us. So when it was time to board, I saw a long line of people waiting to board. So I stood in that line, and it was so nice because Asiana Airlines noticed that I was a mother traveling with a baby, and they were like, excuse me, come here. And they basically gave me like, you know, a pre-boarding status, I guess, and helped me to pre-board. When I got to the entrance of the jet bridge, I put on the carrier that I had in the basket of the stroller, and I put Taylor on, and then an airline staff member helped me close the carrier in the back, and then I broke down the stroller, but like because I had this huge toddler attached to my chest, like it was kind of hard to do that. And I wish I recorded me trying to break down the stroller, like it was a struggle. And I remembered to record once we landed and I was reopening the stroller, but it wasn't as hard at that point because she was awake once we landed. But the hardest part was getting through the airport and onto the airplane with a sleeping toddler, because it's just physically challenging. So I had her strapped to me, and I broke down the stroller, and I was sweating by the time I was done, but I got it done. And then when we walked through the jet bridge, the airline staff lady pulled Taylor's suitcase, and then I pulled mine and had Taylor in tow, and then we got to the plane. The plane was so nice and clean. The flight attendants look so chic in their super crisp and clean looking PPE. Like they all had these beautiful goggles, I don't know what you call them, but like I've not seen such stylish, beautiful glasses for COVID protection. And then they had like the KF94 masks, the Korean ones. Then they had these white mesh, like almost like lab coat looking things that were over their uniforms, and they just looked so nice. Because Taylor fell asleep on the way to the airport, and she usually sleeps about 11 hours overnight, she fell asleep at I think 9:40 p.m. and she slept until 8 a.m. local time of LA. That was basically the first 8 hours of the flight, and so I had just a little over 4 hours to have to keep her entertained. So I showed her videos. We got this thing called a boogie board from our neighbors. They gifted us a few things to use on the plane to keep her occupied. And I brought some books, and I can't really remember what else we did, but we made it work. She did get difficult at times, but overall I would say it was pretty manageable. Hey, are you a demon child? Oui. Oui, yes I am. And I highly recommend flying an overnight flight if you have a pretty good sleeping baby, because like it just knocked a lot of hours off of the long journey for us. So once we landed, I found my stroller at the landing gate, and Taylor was awake, so I didn't have to hold her while I was reassembling it. And then the first stop you come to is like a health inspection desk, and so you submit a health questionnaire. They give you instructions about their quarantine safety protocols, and they take your temperature there. Then you go to the quarantine app installation area. So for me, I am a US citizen. My dad is a dual citizen of US and Korea. And so if you have a direct relative that is a Korean citizen living in Korea, you're able to skip the government facility quarantine and quarantine with your relative, as long as you legitimately prove your family relations. And so the easiest way to do that is a family relations certificate, which is something that the Korean government has for every single one of its citizens. But I was in a unique circumstance because my dad was not a citizen anymore once I was born. And so I'm actually not listed on his family relations certificate, although my 2 older brothers are. And so I called a few of the Korean embassies in the States beforehand to ask what I can do to prove my relationship. and basically they said that I needed a birth certificate with an apostille. And so I went through the whole process of getting the apostille for myself and for Taylor, but New York State actually took very long to get me my documents for Taylor. They actually didn't end up sending it until we were already in Korea for like several days already. So basically I just took my apostille with my birth certificate, and for Taylor I just brought her birth certificate without the apostille, just hoping that the officials will believe that she's legitimately my daughter, and since I'm legitimately my father's daughter, we can stay with him. When we went to the quarantine app installation desk, the first booth asked for my family documents, and then they helped me install the app and they said it was okay, but I went to a second desk that had to like verify those things and finish the app installation process. And then at that second desk, they called the number that you provide for your relative. And so they called my dad, and he didn't answer the first time. So I was a little bit worried, but I messaged him, and then eventually he did answer. And so that was fine. Then I had to wait in a line. It was called like COVID-19 something. It was like a COVID-19 desk basically, and there they give you like a badge thing, and I guess they're color coordinated to say like if you're going to a government facility, if you're going to your relatives. I got fingerprinted. They took my photo. It was like biometric scanning or whatever, and then I got this yellow string tag for me and Taylor. Then we went to the passport control desk, which was the final desk, and there the man asked for my birth documents again, and he like thoroughly examined it. Like I went into an office while he examined these documents, and then he said that I had to switch out the yellow badges because I'm staying with a relative. Well, actually, yeah, I gave him back the badges, and then he didn't give me any new ones, so I guess like you don't need the badges if you're staying with a relative. The whole process from when we landed, which was around 4:40 a.m. to once I got to see my dad, it was about 2 hours, so we were pretty exhausted by the time we met him. But yeah, the final step was the passport control, and the man approved my documents and made sure I knew all the rules about the quarantine, and then he let us go to baggage claim. When I got to baggage claim, because it took me so long to get out of that whole process, my bags were just on the floor off the rotating belt thing. It's nice in Korea because they have those Smarty carts for free and like everywhere, and so I was able to stack all my bags on there and push just one thing. When we came out of the exit door into the arrivals hall, they checked my documentation a final time, and then once they finally approved that, then Taylor and I each got an orange dot sticker here. So that's where we saw my dad. And then when we got to the final exit point, they asked like how we're getting home. So I said my dad is here to pick us up, and then they asked him if he knows all of the rules about picking up a relative. It's like you have to sit in diagonal seats, you have to wear masks the whole time, you have to open the windows every now and then. He said yes, and so then we finally got out. When we finally got out, I took a picture of the sky, and it was just completely beautiful and welcoming. And so even though it was such a grueling process, and we are still in the midst of our 2-week quarantine right now, I was just at peace and really glad to come here because I really wanted to visit my dad. I've been working for 5 years, so I didn't have time to spend a lot of time with either of my parents during the 5 years. And with my mom passing last year, my dad being in Korea alone, I really wanted to spend time with him. So no longer working at the moment really allowed us to spend a longer time here. And so I'll try to document our journey while we're here. And I'll probably share some quarantine videos to show like things I've done to pass time with my 2.5-year-old. Yeah. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments below, and thanks for watching.